All right, welcome to the Lead Generation World UK and Europe conference. We are on day 5. Boy, it's been a good week of great sessions, and we've got one last one to kick it off. We're just really excited to welcome our next presenter. But before I do that, I do want to sort of say my normal spiel, which is participate. There's a couple different ways to ask questions, and we certainly want your questions. You can do it through the Whova app, which you may be watching this presentation through, or through Zoom. Either way, use the Q&A functionality in both of those applications. I will see them and I'll ask our presenter the questions at the end of the presentation. Don't worry, they all will be addressed. If for some crazy reason we are flooded with questions, we'll make sure we get them answered for you one way or the other. But please do ask questions. Like I said, we all get more out of it when we have questions asked. So please do so. Without further ado, I want to welcome our next presenter, David Gowans. He's from Browser to Buyer and probably one of the smartest CROs that I've talked to. And so I'm really excited to talk with him and hear his presentation on conversion rate optimization. So David, I'm going to hand it over to you and let you take it away from here.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Michael. And yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Just about afternoon. And yeah, it's a pleasure to be speaking. So yeah, it's a very interesting area to talk about. Conversion optimization, of course, a big deal for many businesses. And what I think is really interesting to talk today is, to be talking to an audience of people who are involved, of course, in lead generation and, conversion optimization for many reasons is probably been a little overlooked in many sectors like lead generation. So hopefully today I can help to address that. So just to give you a little bit of idea about what I'll be talking about today. I'll be starting off with just talking through some details about conversion optimization in general. So to give you a little bit of an introduction into both what I see conversion optimization is and also what it isn't. And then as well on top of that, talking a little bit about sort of what makes great conversion optimization. So what's the right approach to it? How can you actually approach it in a way that will make a big difference for your website and for your business? And once I've gone through that, hopefully a little bit of inspiration from some of the sort of solutions we've found to the problems of users. And then what I want to talk about, the title of this session and sort of the second half, is to go into a bit more detail about how you can do conversion optimization in a world where you might not have a lot of visitors. I mean, this is a problem for sites in many industries. This is particularly a problem in the lead generation space, where often, you're generating quite high value leads, and those leads are mean that, you don't have a huge volume of traffic to work with. Now, what I want to share with you today is some of the tools and techniques you can use, whether you've got a big site, whether you've got hundreds of thousands of visitors and thousands of conversions, or whether you've got a very small site, and some of the things you can be doing there, because they are equally, there's equal opportunities, or sometimes even better ones. But just to kick off, as Michael said, I am Dave Gowans. I'm the founder and managing director at Browser to Buyer. We are a conversion optimization agency, and we work with businesses around the world to effectively increase their conversion rates. So we work with all sorts of companies, from big names. You can see some of them on the screen there, people like Orange, the post office, Uswitch, all sorts of sort of big e-commerce companies and things like that. But also we do a lot of work in spaces like affiliate marketing, lead generation, business to business, where there's a lot smaller volumes, and also, where the products are and services that are being offered on the site are, obviously less well known, and arguably that's where conversion optimization can be a lot more helpful, because somebody who's making a very considered purchase of something, like an insurance product or something like that, there's a lot more opportunities to influence them than somebody who's picking, a pair of jeans online or a shirt or something like that, where they're very sort of product focused. So we do all forms of conversion optimization. We are based on research and data is where we come from, and an expert approach. And most of the companies we work with get between a 10 and 30% increase in their conversion rate within the first few months. And I guess that's probably the first thing I want to say about, conversion optimization is, if you're not doing it or not currently considering it, the value that you can gain from optimizing your conversion rate is huge. I mean, just to kick off, I want to show you a couple of examples of tests we've run recently across various different industries. So, to give you a bit of a flavor of the sorts of things we could be doing. So this one is a lead generation example on a very low traffic site, in fact. And this is something we're all probably pretty familiar with, a get in touch form. This was for people to arrange, a site visit and a quote. And these things are naturally not great for users to fill in effectively. You are being asked for some very personal information, your phone number, your email address, your name. You just have a big white box that you need to fill in the details of how you can help. And, traditionally this is preventing people from converting. There's a lot of worries, there's a lot of concerns about that. So in this particular case, we tested what you do see on a lot of sites and what is extremely effective. We brought in a simple tool. And in this case, you selected the answers to a few very simple questions. And instead of arranging a visit, this was more of a sort of assessment. Are we suitable for you? And of course, 99% of the answers were, yes, we can help you. Give us a few more details. And this had two benefits for the company. One being we gathered a lot more information. We could ask very specific questions. But more importantly, there was a 24% increase in the leads coming from this form compared to the control. And when you think about that, that's a huge difference to the business. That's 24% more leads from the same traffic, that's 24% more revenue. And ultimately, your site is performing better. And if you're paying for that traffic, suddenly you can pay more for your keywords and all sorts of things that come off the back of that. So that was sort of a traditional example where there are known problems with forms, and when we did some approaches to solve them. The next example, it's actually from e-commerce, but it was e-commerce where we did a lot of work to understand the users. So in this case, the original page, it's not shown here, but it was a very traditional Shopify page, with the basic product information. And the product being sold here, it's called a power massager. It's a tool for people who do generally quite, intense sports, things like CrossFit and a lot of workouts and things like that. So this is the sort of product that if you see it and someone recommends it to you, you love it and you recommend it to all your friends, which is fantastic. But what we found was a load of people just come onto the site and they say, what is this thing? What does it do? So the approach that we took here was to try and address some of those problems. So you'll see sort of up here on the sort of left of the screen, you can see we focused on traditional things like benefits instead of features. What would it do for you? But what was important here is we did a load of research into the customers. We did a load of research into what motivated them and what would cause them to buy. And one of the big things that came out was that this product is used by a lot of celebrities, people, NFL players, it's used by Olympians, it's used by mixed martial arts people, really big names. And we put those people on the site and we could say, here are your heroes, here are professional sports people, they use this thing. And it was huge. We'd seen that from the data that people respected that. And then, of course, once we got it on the site, we got about an 11% increase in the sales coming from that page. Now, a lot of what people talk about when they talk about CRO and conversion optimization is best practices. There's a lot of stuff out there about, put this on your site, put social proof on your site, do this, do that, the things that should work. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And in this case, this was a retailer we were working with where we put product reviews on. The rugs that they sell were very highly reviewed. We put those review ratings on the page and we actually saw a drop in the conversion rate. And, there could be many reasons for that. Our hypothesis in this case was that although it did well for the rugs that were popular, the ones that didn't have reviews then looked comparatively worse. So the lesson here is not everything works, and you've got to do a lot of work to understand what the best things are to do on the site. And of course, ideally you need to test to find out what things have the most value. So there's a couple of examples there, and that shows obviously the value of A/B testing, the value of conversion optimization, the value of sort of doing this research on websites. But what I want to talk about now is actually a myth about conversion optimization, and then to talk about what good conversion optimization really is. So conversion optimization CRO is not just A/B testing. So A/B testing, in essence, is taking two versions of the page, showing half the users one version, half the users another version, and then you're measuring the difference between them. Is this version better than the other one? Now, this often gets very much confused with CRO because this is the main implementation of it. But in essence, A/B testing is a tool. It's a way to validate the changes you're making on your site. It's a way to validate both, were they an improvement? Can we statistically say that they are? But also to validate how big, did changing this give me a 20% increase and changing this one give me a 10% increase? But ultimately, A/B testing is just a tool. It is just one of the things in the arsenal of CRO, and it's just one aspect of it. And I think this is one of the areas where people, particularly in industries where there are lower volumes, where you're not doing thousands of orders a day and things like that, where people get stuck because they try and do an A/B test. It might not be significant. They try out an idea that someone said, they tried out some best practice, it didn't win, the test never finished because you don't have enough traffic, whatever that reason might be, and people lose their interest in it. So ultimately, what I want to say is, keep A/B testing as a tool. It's a great tool. It's a great tool if you can use it, but ultimately CRO is about a lot more than that. And it's actually the other parts of CRO that are really bringing you the benefits. The test is just the final verification. So what is CRO? It's about understanding two things. It's about understanding why your users don't convert. So what we're saying is using data and research and everything we can gather about your particular users. What is it that's stopping them? What stops them from buying? What stops them from submitting a form? What stops them from getting in touch, phoning you up, whatever that reason is? That's the core. Is we need to understand what those reasons are. You can read pages of best practice. People say people are worried about pricing, or they're worried about trust and all these things. Yes, in general, that's true. For your specific users, that may or may not be true, and that's what you need to understand. But then it's about solving the problems. What can you do about those problems? Again, there are the traditional ones like a lack of trust. Well, I could put Trustpilot reviews on the site. It's a simple solution. It's straightforward. Anyone could do that. But some of these problems are bigger. Some of these problems are things that aren't easily solved by just dropping some review scores on your site or something like that. So the two key parts here are, first of all, you've got to do that understanding. You've got to understand why your users don't convert, what the problems are. And then you need to look at what are the ways for your site, specifically for your users, to solve those problems. And that's what I want to talk about today is, what is the framework? What is the approach you can use to do this well? Now, the first half of this, why your users don't convert. There are a load of tools and techniques. I will go through them in a little bit more detail in a few minutes. But the first thing you want to think about is sort of the mindset of your users. You've got to think about how they're considering your site, how they're considering your products, your services, whatever it is that you're offering. And what we use, and what is a very effective way to do that, is to think about two things. And what we always talk about is what we call barriers, or things that will stop you from converting. And then there's motivators, things that would make you more likely to convert if you knew about that thing. So I'll take you into a few examples, explain what I'm talking about there. And then, as I say, a little bit later on, I can take you through some of the approaches we use to discover these. So the first one is barriers. So as I said, a barrier is something that will stop a user from converting. So these can be all sorts of things. And I'll give you some examples here, but as I say, we're very much specific to your individual site. The core ones and the easy ones to find are probably things that are usability related or things that are content related. So the users might not be able to work out what the price of your product is. That might be their main concern, or they're having trouble filling out a contact form. Where do I put my house number in? I live in a flat, not a house. So where do I put which floor I live on, or whatever that is for delivery? It's a problem. You hopefully can identify these things yourself. If you can't, there are techniques that will help to find these. But these are the core barriers. They're easy to find. They're easy to solve. You then get the bigger questions. So these are sort of the questions that people might be asking themselves when you're on your site. So does this solution work for me? Are these diet pills going to be right for me? Does this, if I buy this particular boiler, is it going to work for my house? If I buy this rug, is it the right size for my property? People have that concern, and what you need to be doing is making sure that you're answering the right questions. And is this insurance the right one for me? I don't know, but you need to understand what it is that generates those questions. And then what happens if things go wrong, for example? People will be worrying about that. If I buy this boiler from you and it doesn't work, then who's going to come and fix it for me? Are you going to do it? Am I left? Do I have to solve it myself? If I buy this piece of technology and it doesn't work with my my computer, or whatever it is, how do I solve those problems? So those are just examples. Again, these are common ones that come up. Then there's sort of trust and worry about things like spam calls and, is this a scam? Can I trust you? You're just the first result that's come up on Google. It's great if you're a big, well-known brand with, done loads of marketing. If you're just a random site, how do I know you're not a scam? How am I going? Are you just going to spam call me? Are you just going to sell me something expensive that I don't really need? Those are the sort of worries people have. And then there's concerns about actually going through the process. So again, if you're filling out an insurance form, well, if I'm not sure if that room in my house counts as a bathroom or it's just a, or not, or I don't know if this is a bedroom or an office or something like that. If I tell you this wrong, am I going to be covered by my insurance? Or, if I tell you the wrong details about the size of a room, are you going to calculate the wrong solution for me? Any of those sorts of questions. So people start to worry about getting the details right. And, what can you do to help them with that? Can you provide solutions to that? But also, sometimes they just want to speak to someone. And sometimes, if you've qualified someone to the right level, the best thing to do is get them on the phone. We did this with a vehicle leasing business, and particularly on mobile devices, once they'd found the vehicle they wanted to lease, actually the best thing to do was to get them to phone the call center, because the call center converted better. Okay, it was expensive to get them to talk to someone, but the conversion rate went up 16% from doing that. And it was directing them to the right place was the best solution to do that. And then you get the comparative questions. Can I get it cheaper elsewhere? Can I really afford this? I mean, this is when you start to get into sort of the bigger, deeper questions that people have. I need a new boiler in my house, but can I afford a new heating system this year? Or can I afford to get my car serviced? Or can I afford this insurance? Do I really need it? Do I need this product? And these are very hard things to address. I mean, actually, one of the interesting things we find is that quite often when we've done research, the two top things that come out for almost every site are prices. I wish it was cheaper. But then the second one being, I don't have the money right now. I haven't been paid. I can't afford this. I want it, but I can't do it. And whether that's e-commerce or online gaming or lead generation, people worry about that. And, that's always a big factor. But then, people don't make decisions in isolation either. You've got to contend with the fact that you're sitting thinking there is a person on my website right now. That person might need to talk to a partner or parents or friends and family. They might want to discuss it with people. They might need to go and check with other people. Can I buy this? Can I book my appointment? Whatever the thing is they're doing, this isn't happening in isolation. And, you even get those outside ones. Is that a baby crying? Is that a doorbell ringing? I've arrived at my destination and I was doing this when I was on the bus or the train. People get distracted. All these things are potential barriers. And I'm just throwing ones out there that we see come up. But you need to identify these from research, because you need to know which ones of these apply to your users and then come up with the solutions. Now, barriers are almost the more straightforward concepts here, because barriers make logical sense, and it's a lot easier to find out why someone doesn't convert than why they do. We almost ignore and forget the people who have converted, but what you need to start thinking about is the world of motivators. What can I do, or what do I know that might make someone more likely to convert? So this can be all sorts of things. A lot of these are in the user's mindset, and these are harder to identify from research. But it might be, for example, you have convinced me that this particular product or service exactly meets my needs. I am looking for a new red rug for my kitchen that's this size. This looks like the one I want. I know it's the right thickness. I want to buy that. Yours is the best solution. I know that there are 10 different options for this piece of technology I want to buy, but I know that the one from Apple, for example, is the best solution for me. Or this is cheaper than I can get elsewhere. You might have gone out there and price compared across 10 different insurance providers and know that this particular insurance is 10 or 20 or 30% cheaper than you can get a quote for elsewhere. Once you've got that knowledge, that makes you more likely to convert. So this is where you now need to start to think about with motivators, for example. If you're cheaper than the competition, talk about it. Talk about how you've price compared. We've done this before in a medical site. They were selling a particular medication online, and we showed a price check. We said, we've price checked against, here's our 4 main competitors, and we know we're cheaper, and we could show that. And that sort of thing is very effective. You saw this example from the one I showed at the beginning of the session. Famous people are a great example, and customers like me are happy. So this is almost the generic way of saying customer reviews are good. But what you probably want to be thinking about is particularly, customers like me. So when you're looking at something like, there's no point in me knowing that someone who lives in another country with a different problem, that the solution worked for them. No, I want someone who looks like me, sounds like me, same age as me, same sort of property as me, specifically that person who bought in the last week loves your product. So there is an aspect of that as well. Can you identify those particular customers who are like me? And then there's all sorts of things that could, if you're a good company, and hopefully hopefully many of us are sort of promoting good companies as well who do good things. A company who's been in business for many years, or a company that really cares about their customers. Or one of the great things is the support after someone buys. This is often forgotten, but quite often if you ask your customers, what do you love about what do you love about us, what do you love about our product or service, it's the great support I get after I bought from you. So tell people about that. There's a real person on the phone, they will talk to you, we'll resolve any problems in 2 minutes, things like that. Motivators can be negative things as well. Things that will make you more likely to buy could be that you will miss out on a deal. I mean, here we come back to sort of traditional conversion optimization best practices. But if this deal is only valid for the rest of today, am I going to miss out on it? If there's only 10 slots available, when I want to book and I know they're going fast, am I going to lose out on that? If this is a once in a lifetime offering, it makes me more likely to buy. And there's also sort of worries, if you can build trust, is there also the motivation that someone else might rip me off? Why do people choose, say, companies like Apple or Microsoft over, smaller unknown businesses? It's because you believe that company is going to be more reputable, and okay, they might be a little bit more expensive, but someone else might be just a scam. So you've got that sort of motivator if you've got it. And a big one can be just removing risk. In essence, when you're looking at converting someone on a website, there is a risk to them, and especially if that is about spending money. I mean, quite often in the lead generation space, it is not. But the risk you're taking ultimately is, I am going to have to spend some money at some point or sign up to something. And if you can reduce that risk for the customer, then that's a benefit for them. I've got a very specific example on this in a minute, but if you take, for example, a money back guarantee, okay, I'm spending this money, but I know I'm going to get that money back if it doesn't work for me. So instantly that's a motivator. You've reduced risk. A free trial reduces risk. So anything that can make that a low risk interaction, phone us for a no obligation quote. We'll come round to your house and we'll give you a no obligation quote for solar panels or something like that. It's very low risk. The risk then is your time and pressure and things like that, but it's not money. And also a big motivator for people can be that they can't wait. If you've got a leaky pipe in your house and you need it fixed, well, you might call the plumber that will come in 2 hours, not the plumber that will come in 6 hours, because you have a really strong motivator. So it could be things like that, and of course, Amazon play on this in a big way. Prime delivery, 1 day, 2 day delivery, get it tonight in some cases. If you can't wait for what you're getting, really show your speed of service to them, and that will work well. But again, like the barriers, this is about your site. This is about what we discover from you. So that's the essence. This is the first essence of good conversion optimization, is you've got to understand with the research why your users don't convert. And if you go through a normal sort of research process, you'll probably come out with 5 or 6 barriers and 5 or 6 motivators. And those will be the things I would say to concentrate on. And those are the things, if you know that price and trust and, getting confused about what information you need to put in are your 3 big barriers. Then you know the problems you need to solve. And because those are the biggest problems for your users, they'll bring you the biggest benefit if you solve them. Now, solving problems can sometimes be hard. As I've said before, some of those things, some of them are very straightforward. Some of them, there's a clear solution. My price is expensive. I offer a best price guarantee. Show the best price guarantee. You've overcome that to some extent. But some of these are very hard to overcome, and especially the ones that I was talking about, some of those barriers, like, that you're concerned whether this is the right solution for you, or you have to go and talk to a partner and discuss it. Those are the ones where you need creative solutions. So that's when you need to start thinking about, it's not about just changing things on the website and improving design and things. It's about really how do you solve those problems. So what do I mean by that? Well, here's a couple of examples from real clients. This is a client we've worked with for many years. They are a luxury villa rental company. So they are renting out holiday properties for people who want to go generally on big family holidays and big sort of holidays with friends. So you're talking about the sort of holiday where you go with 3 or 4 other families, or a group of 10 or 12 friends, stag nights, that sort of thing. They're renting out those sort of things, but these are very high-end properties. You can see pools and fantastic looking, and you're talking about spending thousands and thousands of pounds to book a week, which is great. Someone will go on the site, someone will be the lead booker. They will go on and they will find a property they like. It will be in their price range. It's got all the facilities they want. It's available the week they want. So they're ready to buy. And we asked them the question. We did on-site surveys. We've done user tests. We've done email surveys. Okay, you're ready to buy. Why aren't you booking? And the answer was, I need to check with my party. I need to confirm with the 4 other families. Is this okay for them? I need to go and ask the 12 other people we're going away for the weekend with, is this okay with you? And that was a huge barrier. And you come back to asking yourself, how do you solve that? You can't just put a best price guarantee on or something like that. And what was interesting about this one was it turned out what we could do was just change the way we presented things. So for this particular client, they offered a 48-hour guarantee. So if you booked a property, you could cancel within 48 hours for no charge. And that was great. So the first thing we did was try to promote that. But then we realized that didn't lower that barrier low enough. So what we actually did was this. Down the bottom of the page here, you can see when you had the opportunity to book, we actually offered them the chance to hold the property. So, I'm not ready to book, but can you hold these dates for me? And effectively what we did was we just slightly rebuilt the booking funnel and let them book the property, and they wouldn't be charged for 48 hours. So actually there was no difference. It was, a few subtle things in how we arranged it, but basically the process was the same. But instead of having to put their money down and do a booking, they were holding the dates, they went off and talked to everyone, and they continued to book. And this made an absolutely massive difference to the business, because suddenly you had this much lower risk opportunity. We'd overcome, as much as we could, the barrier that you had to check with other people by saying, don't worry, book it first, check with them afterwards. And it's those sorts of solutions. That's when you get thinking about the problems. That's when you can come up with these sort of really creative solutions. Another company we work with, very interesting business. This company, they sell a converter box that you can put in your car to allow your vehicle to run on bioethanol, which is petrol effectively made from plants, crops. It's very big in the US. It's big in France and sort of in Northern Europe. And this is a great product. It's cheap. It's, as you can see, saves you a huge amount of money. And we knew that people like the idea of saving money. But this was more an aspect of sort of motivators here. We knew that people were concerned about, their car, because you buy this little converter box. Okay, well, there's a guarantee. But if you break your vehicle, I put a 400 euro box in my car and broken my 14,000 euro car. Who's going to help me with that? So people were worried about that. But on the flip side, we had this massive motivator that just wasn't clear on the site. So you could go in and you could check, is my car compatible? And we told you, yes, it is. What we found out when we did our research was the engineers in the company, they had dedicated engineers who went through every single model of car, right down to the very detail of different configurations, and they checked, is it compatible? They looked through all the engine specifications, they worked out sort of what wiring you needed, even to the level of looking at the measurements of the engine bay and making sure you could physically fit this box inside. Nobody knew this. They were doing all this massive amount of work. And in fact, we could see on the live chat, people would ask questions and the engineer would come on and tell you things about the engine of your specific vehicle. And we wanted to get that across. So what we did was we reconfigured the compatibility checker, and we said, you put in your details, and we actually, might not be quite visible here, but we wrote there, our engineers have verified all the relevant data for this vehicle. We know that these particular models will be compatible. We know that these won't. And not just that, we guarantee the compatibility. So, we were taking something the business was already doing and spending a lot of money to do, and we made it more visible. And that was the simple solution to sort of promoting that motivator. And again, this in itself was just part of the changes we made, but I think overall this nearly doubled the performance of this particular landing page. And a third example was this was actually a very low volume industry, a very interesting one. So this was around property subsidence. So this is the problem that, due to tree roots growing or due to bad soil underneath your property, or if it's been built badly, you may find that it starts to sink. And it's a dreadful thing to happen because not only is it hugely expensive to fix, but it harms the cost of your property because you suddenly have big cracks in the wall, your property might fall down. The traditional solution to this is digging out under the property and building new foundations, which you can probably imagine is very expensive. It's very time consuming. It's very, very messy and disruptive. The solution that our clients had was basically you drill very small holes under the property and you pump in what's effectively some expanding foam. So they pump in this foam, it expands out, it sets hard like concrete, it solves the problem. And you can explain that. They had loads of words to explain that, saying how, there was less disruption. We had comparison tables to say, these are the differences between the two methods. But what we realized was that was just not effective enough. We needed an effective way to convey the two real benefits, that this fixes your problem fast and that it's really, really clean. And what we ended up doing was they had some great video evidence. We put together sort of a 2-minute video, and this was the first thing you saw when you came onto the site. And I've got a clip of it here, which hopefully will play successfully through the webinar. But what this video did was, first of all, it showed it fixing the problem. They speed up the footage a little bit, but you can actually see it solving the problem. And then the second half of it shows you the process and shows how clean it can be. So risking to see whether this actually works. So this first half here, as hopefully you can actually see these cracks in the property closing up. And then the second part here, this is how simple it is. You drill a hole, you cut off the pipe when you're finished, and he even just puts a little bit of wood in here, and it's done, And people can see that, and it was fantastic. And this, again, massive difference, because people could finally see. We'd uncovered that stuff that, their customers knew that. We had loads of testimonials. You could have pages of testimonials saying it was clean, they were in and out in a day, it was amazing. People needed to see it with their own eyes, and that was sort of how we addressed that problem. So the key there is, once you've got these problems and once you understand the problems, you then need to come up with creative solutions. But once you know the problems with data, you know what you need to solve. CRO isn't going to work if you just throw best practices at things. But if you really can come up with these creative solutions, then you've got the big opportunities to make a big difference. So to sort of wrap us up today, what I wanted to do is sort of go back to the essence of how do you do this great CRO? Physically, how do you do it? And how do you do it on a big site? How do you do it on a small site? So in essence, big sites are easy. E-commerce, that sort of thing, And when I say a big site, I mean sort of 100,000 or more visitors a month, 1,000 or more conversions a month, somewhere where you've got good volumes. And from that perspective, it's very easy. You can do extensive research. You've got loads of quantitative, you've got qualitative research. You can support what you're doing with multiple different methods. It's very easy. well, I say it's easy. It's easy to do the research. It may not necessarily be easy to find the conclusions. And solving those problems, this is when A/B and split testing comes in. You have the traffic to run between 1 and 3 tests per month. You can measure your differences. That works very well. But it's when you look at those medium sites and those smaller sites, those sites with 10,000 to 100,000 visitors, maybe you're doing a few hundred conversions a month, or even the really small sites. I know this from my own business. When you're generating a very small number of leads, how do you do conversion optimization? How do you do research when you've got a few thousand visitors? How do you measure increases in your conversion rate if you've only got 1 or 2 conversions a day, or sometimes a few a week? Even though, I know from many industries, the value of a conversion can be so high that it's really worthwhile. So what I want to take you through here to wrap us up is really the tools and techniques we use to do that research and understanding, and then the tools and techniques we use to solve and test those problems, and to talk a little bit about which ones work best for different types of sites. So on that understanding side, number one tool, analytics. And analytics works very well for large sites. It works very well for medium sites. You can go in there, you can discover where do people land, where do they go, where do they drop out. You can track interactions. It's not so good for small sites. You've maybe only got 1 or 2 pages and you've only got 1 interaction. You're not necessarily going to learn a lot from this. So there are things you can find. It's a good, important tool, but this is more towards sort of the upper end of sites. What I would say as a quick warning here is beware. There can be some misleading metrics, particularly if you have a single landing page, because things like time on site, bounce rates require a second interaction. And if you don't have that second interaction, those measurements aren't telling you a lot. So, beware, especially if it's a single page site. But analytics is good. It has its place. It's better, again, towards the sort of upper end of the scale. One that works very well across all types of sites, and we do a lot of work with this, is heat maps. So a heat map can be one of 2 forms. It can be a click map, so showing where people are clicking on the page, but perhaps the more valuable ones are what I've shown there on screen, and that is that's actually an attention map. So it's not even a scroll map. This is an attention map, and that's what a tool like Crazy Egg will give you. And this is great because what that's showing you, those hot spots of sort of white and yellow and red, are where people are actually stopping scrolling. So it's where they're reading. And this is even better on a mobile device. The problem is the heat maps are really, really tall and they don't look good on a slide. But what this can show you is where people are stopping and paying their attention. So this one on the right here is actually from that site, that the one with the vehicle, the boxes to convert vehicles, and this bit in here is the compatibility tester. So we were seeing people were going on there and stopping on that, so we knew that was important to people. But what you can also important is what people are and aren't seeing. Are there things on the page that catch their attention, and equally, are there things they're skipping over? So you can start to understand that. You can start to understand what's important to your users, but also what information they're missing. This will work on any size of site. Obviously, more data is better, but even if you've got a few hundred visitors, you can start to gather this data. Crazy Egg is my preference here. They provide better heat maps, but Hotjar is a great tool. It's free. You can put that on and do it with that. On-site surveys are a fantastic tool to find out why users aren't converting. Again, this is one that really only works well on larger sites. You're probably looking at about 1 to 3% of your users will respond to a question like this. But get questions on your site. Ask people open questions. Is there anything stopping you from buying today? Is there something stopping you from booking the property? Ask them outright. But you can also use this to discover people's needs and their aims. We worked with a VPN software provider in the US, and we were asking people, why do you want a VPN? And some people would say, I want it for security. I want to access unblocked sites. I want to watch Netflix content from other countries. Once you know those things, you know how to structure it. You can understand your users' motivators. But very much encourage you, ask open questions here. It will take longer to analyze, but it's really worth it because you get the things the users really say, but you'll also see things in their own words. And that's very important. Again, for the VPN business we worked with, we could look at the words people use. Did they talk about their privacy or protecting their computer or unblocking sites? And then we took those words and we put them in the headline, and suddenly it matches to the user's need and the page is more relevant to them. So that can be extremely valuable. Again, Hotjar is a great option here. Also, if you want to do your own in Google Sheets or something like that, that's also works well, but Hotjar is generally very good. Doesn't work well for medium and small sites because, as I said, if only 1 or 2% of your users are responding to this, and also, it is getting in the way. You're popping something up in front of them. So a good technique, if you're allowed to, if whoever you're partnering with, who you're sending your leads to, or of course, if you're selling directly to customers, something that works very well is email surveys. We tend to ask people between sort of 5 and 7 questions. And again, they're open questions, they're detailed questions. We tend to incentivize them, chance to win a $50 Amazon voucher or something like that. But this is great because you can use all your historical data for this. You can look at all your customers in the last 6 months. What did they do? So, it starts to be available for small and medium, your medium and your small sites. And it's great there and it's also great for identifying motivators. So the nice thing here is that you can ask questions like, what do you love about the product? And there was a great story. We used to work with GoToMeeting, and one of the things that we found out from their customers was that they loved being able to do meeting recordings. They didn't talk about it on their website. Once we put this on the free trial page, suddenly the conversion rate from trial to paid customers went up by about 16%. So you can identify those motivators and then you can use them. And email surveys are a great way to do that. And Typeform is great for this. MailPro will let you send out loads of emails if you need to. User tests are another technique that work very, very well when you're talking about smaller sites. So a user test is where we take a panel of users and we say, recruit some of them. They are paid to take part. We will have a screener question, and what we tend to do is find people who have used this product or service in the past, or are currently considering. So, I am currently considering private healthcare. If they say yes, we then ask them, talk about your needs, talk about your requirements. And then those users, once they've gone through that process and we know about them, we then ask them go off on Google and actually do that, and then come onto our site and do the same process. So this is great because not only do you see sort of how you compare to the competition, you see your usability issues, but you get real in-depth data from those individual visitors. And it's great because you don't need a lot of traffic to do this. You're buying in the user. Now, you have to be careful here because you don't want to take too much from an individual user. One specific user can tell you something and you don't necessarily want to take too much into that. That's not your whole user base. But in the absence of wider data, this is extremely valuable. And people like Userfeel, Try My UI offer this. If you're looking for B2B, there's a company called Winter. They're more in the sort of tech space, marketing space, but if you need a B2B audience, they can provide that sort of thing. Talk to your customers, actually talk to real customers. Again, we did this with GoToMeeting and it was extremely successful, and you can do this whether you're a big or a small site. Get some recent customers, get some recent leads and phone them up. Have a Zoom call with them, ask them some questions. Why did you decide to buy? What do you love about us? What do you hate? Who else did you consider? Again, this is the sort of thing, you don't need a big volume of traffic to do this. You can do this if you've got 3 customers, phone one of them up as long as you've got permission, and you can reward them for this, of course, as well, incentivize them to take part. But again, one of the things that you can do here is to really get insights from a small number of customers. It's not as good as getting insights from loads of customers, but you'll learn so much that it'll help you to identify sort of those barriers and those motivators. And finally, just talk to people. This is a great one. Buy someone a coffee. You can, hopefully in most countries now, you can go and buy someone a coffee, but just take someone out and show them the website. They don't have to be an expert in the marketplace. They don't have to understand your product. A fresh pair of eyes will tell you new things. They'll say, well, hang on, what does this cost? Or I don't understand how you're doing this. Or where do I fill in my details? And this is something, it's ideally suited to small sites. I wouldn't recommend necessarily doing this for a big site because you can get real users. But if you've got a small site or a small number of visitors or a small number of users, then this is a great way to just sort of generate that feedback and get a new pair of eyes sort of on the site. So those are some of the ways you can use. And as you can see, there are different ways. There are so many different ways. There's tons I haven't mentioned as well, that you can gather this data. And some of them work well for the big sites. Some of them work well, for smaller sites. When it comes to solving the problems, and I know that we're running a little short on time, so I won't spend too long in this area. But when it comes to solving the problems, you've got different tools and techniques as well. Split testing, A/B testing is my go-to method for a large site. Tools like Convert, Google Optimize. What you need to be aware of here is if you're running a split test, you probably want to be aiming for a minimum of around 300 conversions in each of your variations. So if you're doing an A/B test, that's 300 in each, 600. If you haven't got that much traffic, this might not be the route for you because you're going to spend too much time running tests and it's not necessarily going to bring you the value. So many people come to me and say, can we run lots and lots of tests? And they have 10 or 20 conversions each month. And, they would run forever. We will never reach statistical significance. But so this is better for larger and medium sites, but understand what your statistical significance means as well. People will go for 95% significance and things like that. But think about what your risk and reward is. That means you are 95% sure this version is better than that version. Well, would you accept 80%? If you're 80% sure and you've got all this data that backs it up, maybe that's a valid level to be at. If you're a medium site, can you do this as a before and after change? Change it, note the time in Google Analytics, and then look 2 weeks later. You have to be careful with this. You get a load of externalities. We did this with a client in the shared office space. They were trying to book viewings. The work we did coincided with the coronavirus pandemic. So we had the challenge that when we'd launched the page, we also had loads and loads of pent up demand in the market. So it becomes then challenging to say what came from our work and what just came from an improvement. So, trying to be careful about that. Compare like for like periods, see if you can find sort of a control page, part of your site that you didn't change and see have there been any changes in the conversion rate there. But it works well for medium and small sites. You can look and you can say this was better before and after. But even if you can't do that, I'd say, just go out there and make the changes. If you've done the research, if you understand your customers, there is a relatively high likelihood that the change will work for you. Beware of variability, keep an eye on the numbers, but this is an example here of a very, very small business we work with, and we rolled out the landing pages for them without making the changes, without testing them, because they just didn't have the volume. But we knew what their customers wanted, and it did make a big difference to their business. So if you're a big site, lots of research, lots of data, lots of testing. If you're a smaller or medium site, focus on those qualitative methods, email surveys, user tests, things that you can do without a large volume of traffic, and measure your changes as much as you can. But bear in mind that if you are making a change and you're confident in the data that underlies it, it's most likely to improve. So you don't have to test it. It's just better if you do. So ultimately, things to remember, CRO is not A/B testing. It is so much more. What you really want to be doing is using suitable research, suitable data to really understand your users, identify the barriers and identify those motivators using data, and then make the changes on your site that solve the problems. Test them if you can, but if you can't, just do it, solve the problems for them. And the big thing is get started. There are things you can go off and do right now. Go and run some user tests, go and buy a coffee for a friend. But if you're not doing conversion optimization, you're leaving money on the table. So get out there and start doing this and learn something about your users and hopefully and ideally improve your conversion rate. So sorry, I think I may have run on a little longer than intended there, but hopefully we have a little bit of time for questions if people have them.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, David. It was excellent. And I just want to make sure people have your information too, as well, to get a hold of you. Can you just quickly share your email or the best way to get a hold of you?
Absolutely. So let's go back. I am dave.gowans
Perfect.
at browsertobuyer.com or browsertobuyer.com for the website. And you can fill in our not very optimized lead generation form on there.
Of course, your website isn't optimized very well. That's just how it goes, right? It's like the the mechanic that has the broken down car, but
Exactly.
he's busy working on everybody else's car. We do have a couple questions for you. And actually, I think they're actually sort of in line with each other, but we'll ask them separately. The first one was around chatbots. Have you seen sort of chatbots help conversion rate or hurt them?
I don't have any data to necessarily support them, but we have seen both. So they can be a good solution. And they can be a very good solution if there is something common that people ask. So there's several different ways you can approach this. A chatbot done badly will probably harm conversion rates because you're annoying people, you're popping something up. If you can ask the right questions, then either you're qualifying that lead, and then you can pass them on to a real person. What I have seen has worked quite nicely for some businesses, and it's worked with a company who did this with, I think it was dentists in the US, was just to use the chatbot as your booking process. So you would ask various questions, you can be friendly, and it comes back to that thing I showed right at the beginning of, ask easy questions first. Hi, what's your name? It's Dave. Which of these three things are you interested in today? And you work through, and suddenly, before you know it, you've booked them an appointment, or you've got their phone number and you're getting in touch. So actually, and some sites do very well, the whole site is a chatbot. So yes, I think they can work very well if it's the right sort of industry. And I think also, and coming on to that sort of point I said about finding out the sort of wording the users use, if you've currently got chatbots or live chat, find out what terms people use and talk to them in those terms, because then it seems more familiar and it associates them. So I think done well, they can be extremely good for the conversion rate, but as just a pop-up annoying thing at the side, you may find that they're not doing as well.
Yeah, makes sense. The last question was, and I'll add some clarification, I think, to this. Have you seen some use of AI sort of being used effectively on landing pages and the part I'll add on to this is to specify the content for each user?
Yes.
You have used you have seen it used effectively?
I've seen some good use cases. I think one of the big challenges is, it's one of the things that, say, 5 years ago, we were talking about personalization and AI and things like that.
Yeah.
In conversion optimization. I think there's two big problems that come out of it. One is that the essence of it is good. I remember talking to someone maybe even longer than that ago about, I think he was running an online dating site. And it was like, if we can look at every single factor about someone who comes in and show them 10 different pages, and we can work out which one works best for each individual user, it's great. You need a lot of traffic to do that. And I think one of the problems with taking the human out of the loop is that for the majority of sites, there's a lot bigger stuff on the table that you could be doing. And it's about sort of focusing your attention. It's, thinking about sort of what are you trying to achieve with the AI, I guess. We've talked about, for example, it's sort of AI and personalization, but I was talking to a client, it's actually a Rat in the Rugs client, about, do we want to use weather to target people's, on the homepage, and do we want to show, it's raining and cold, we show you nice, warm, cozy rugs, and suddenly we realized, well, actually, no, everyone buys warm, cozy rugs in November, December, because that's when they're going to be buying that. The actual weather outside doesn't matter, but you get this sort of thing, there's a lot of factors that do go into this, but fundamentally, the big differences are probably going to be something totally different. The AI isn't going to necessarily be able to detect that your user is concerned that, let's say that the product isn't going to work for them, as an example, and it can't solve for that. It might be able to solve for the fact that, particular users coming in from a particular traffic source tend to prefer this particular page, and you will be doing that sort of optimization, but you might be getting the 2, 3, 4% when actually you're leaving the 20, 30% on the table, but doing some real research and analysis does work. So I think the concept is definitely there, and as a computer scientist myself, I love the idea of it, but ultimately, yes, when you've got a very mature program of optimization on your site, but you can probably find improvements from much more simple and unfortunately much more manual methods.
That's I thought you were getting to, is that maybe just more complicated than it's worth. Well, I appreciate very much the presentation. It was excellent. If anyone has any further questions, please reach out to Dave separately. But thank you again for the presentation. It was excellent. You do a great job at this. So thank you very much. We'll wrap it up here.
Thank you very much. And yes, please do reach out if you have any questions. I'm always happy to respond and chat through people's conversion challenges. So yeah, please do get in touch.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you very much.